I want to thank both of our distinguished witnesses for being here and for their service to our country. Secretary Stackley, I want to follow up on your testimony from last week's shipbuilding hearing and particularly ask you about the Virginia-class submarine. First of all, is the Virginia-class submarine performing well?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. It's performing well in terms of production, but more importantly, performing well in terms of the fleet. And if you had one of the fleet sailors on board here talking about when they compare Virginia to even an LA class, it's a leap forward in terms of combat capability. They're very excited about it.
Terrific. And as you're probably aware, the Chief of Naval Operations has testified that the Navy's only able to meet 61% of the combatant commander requirements and requests for attack submarines. You're familiar with that number? Yet, as you know, for budget reasons, the Navy has recommended, because of the numbers that were given in the Budget Control Act, that we postpone the procurement of one Virginia-class submarine from 2014 to 2018. And I wanted to ask you about some of your testimony before the shipbuilding hearing about this issue, particularly the issue of if we were able to move to say that if we were to lower the cost by doing it, the cost purchase on an incremental basis. And I believe that you testified last week about the fact that if you look at assess the bottom line or the net cost impact of adding a second Virginia class, in other words, bringing it back up to 2014, that it's near neutral. In other words, the net savings associated with pulling the boat to the left, if we did it on an incremental basis, would effectively, adding the boat by pulling it to the left, outweigh the upfront costs if we had to purchase the entire submarine up front. And as I understand it, the HASC committee the HASC Sea Power Subcommittee did just that and recommended that we actually push back the purchase but do it on an incremental basis. So can you help me, can you comment on this and also explain that if we were to purchase the Virginia class in the incremental way that you described in the shipbuilding hearing, what impact that would have?
Yes, ma'am. First, the way the cost analysis works out is we assess the Virginia class program as opposed to individual boats, what the program cost would be, not simply moving a boat from 2018 back to 2014, but literally moving a boat from the end of the program to 2014 because we want to sustain 2 per year.
Right.
And so then when you look at the total program cost for those 2 different procurement profiles, the upfront cost for that second boat in 2014 is offset by savings across the program in the later years.
By moving it up.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
So at the bottom line, for the Virginia multi-year, 9 versus 10 boats, it is near neutral adding that second boat in 2014. That's independent of how you fund it. The discussion regarding incremental funding simply reflects the constraints that we have for our top line in 2014. We did not have sufficient headroom to fully fund the second boat in 2014. And so there is an exception to the full funding policy that's been put in place for carriers and large deck amphibs that allows you to spread those costs over a number of years to eliminate the spike that it causes in the budget. In this particular case, that would enable us to fund a second boat in 2014 without giving up the second boat in 2018 and stay near neutral at the bottom line.
And the only reason that you weren't able to recommend that to us is because you didn't have that capacity for the submarine fleet. Is that right, in terms of how you could budget?
You say capacity. We don't.
I mean, you didn't have
the
authority is what I meant to say. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. The policy is that we fully fund our capital investments in the year in which we procure them. There are exceptions to that, but we do not have an exception in this case for Virginia. And so while it works out analytically, policy-wise, we don't have the authority to incrementally fund it.
Wouldn't it make sense to have an exception for Virginia, the way you just described it in terms of how we look at this?
Well, when you simply look at the fact that you described in your question, the fact that we have this demand for submarine service that exceeds our capacity, and you look longer term. In fact, longer term, our number of submarine attack boats in the fleet goes down until we hit a valley in the 2030s.
Right, a 9-sub valley then, right? By 2030.
Well, our requirement is 48 boats,
right,
and our force structure out in the 2030s time frame drops well below 48 boats. And so to affect that, to try to improve upon that, you really have to sustain 2 boats per year as long as you can until you get to the point where you have some flexibility in the buy rate. We're not at that point yet. So it's a budget constraint that drove us to make this this reduction in 2014, but the requirement would insist otherwise, that we get back up to 2 boats and sustain it as best we can.
So this would be something that perhaps would be a very important authority that we could give you with respect to our attack submarine fleet, and also making sure if we did what the HASC Sea Power Committee just did, we could ensure that the 2 remained constant in a way that would be much better in terms of trying to meet our combatant commander's requirement for the attack submarine. Isn't that true?
Let me describe that the President's budget didn't request it, but I think it's important that we discuss and provide the information regarding this alternative to full funding so that everyone can assess the value to the force, the value to the industrial base, and then frankly, the affordability that adding that second boat provides, and weigh that against the importance of the full funding policy.
Right, but as we're talking about it in the testimony before the committee today, the affordability piece, this is a very sensible move, as well as making sure that we meet the requests of our combatant commanders, which are already, we're not meeting them. We're only meeting 61% of those requests now.
It is, getting that second boat in 2014 is the most affordable way to buy another submarine.
I very much appreciate your providing that insight to us. I want you to know that this is something that I am going to be proposing and pushing with the rest of the members of the Senate Armed Services Committee. And I think it only makes sense in terms of not only the cost, but also making sure that we maintain our attack submarine fleet, and given the needs of our combatant commanders, and particularly if we look at our shift in strategy as a focus on the Asia-Pacific region, obviously our naval fleet and the importance of it, that's very, very important that we have a robust attack submarine fleet. And the Virginia class is a very important, obviously very, very important to that. So I appreciate your testimony today, and I don't know if my time's expired. Did I get this? This is fine. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here.